Check 1, 2.
Oh, I was going to say, you all ready for Christmas? Or Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate?
I'm not ready for Hanukkah yet.
No?
Christmas not ready. I don't really, I mean, you wait till Christmas Eve and then,
Oh, do you celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah?
for Christmas, I guess.
Yeah.
I go to Mass and stuff.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh dear, I'm being taped.
Are you ready?
More or less I am. We're entertaining. We're doing Christmas Eve from my husband's side. And then we do Christmas Day from my side. So it's a lot, but we do the same menu for both times. So we're not planning different menus, which makes it a little bit easier. But still a lot of work when you entertain. But looking forward to it.
For your husband's side at your house?
And then my side at my house on Christmas Day. Because my husband is Peruvian and they celebrate Christmas Eve.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So,
They call it Noche Buena there?
yes, how did you know that?
Oh, my wife, she does it. She's Dominican.
No, no kidding. Yes, as a matter of fact, when he sent the invitation to his sisters, one of them responded that, and I said, what does that mean? He says, it means Christmas Eve. I'm like, I didn't know that, so I just, so you know that more than I did. Oh, so your wife's from the Dominican Republic.
Yeah,
So her first language is Spanish.
yeah.
Do you speak a little bit?
Yeah,
Do you?
yeah, I used to do that. Yeah, especially when I used to work in Manhattan, I used to.
Oh, well, yo entiendo se hablas despacio. We have a lot of Spanish-speaking people come into our office.
Oh, really?
And my Spanish is not good, but when I start speaking a little, they think I'm fluent.
Oh, okay.
And all of a sudden my conversation's in Spanish, and I'm like, yeah, I don't understand. I'm not that good.
And sometimes they don't even speak the Spanish clearly. It's like, a lot of times, yeah.
Yeah, some of them are, yeah,
They speak
not
very-
fluent in
very
Spanish.
fast, they put the words together. And they have different dialects and stuff. So,
All right, let me go to the ladies' room and get ready.
Check 1, 2.
Do you know which channel?
78 on Cablevision. It's on the files also.
That.
It's at 20 something.
Okay, thank you.
I'll take this.
If anybody's planning on speaking, you just have to sign in first.
It's also online too if you go to the website and see live.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Hey, thanks. You don't get to go to the executive sessions?
No, I don't do that. That I don't do.
You can swear. Yeah. You ready?
I brought the book.
Good.
Since then, I've got to know.
Wait for the commercial to be over, then we can start. Ready? Can I ask you all please stand for the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's town board meeting. It is December 17th, 2019. This is the last meeting of 2019. I know you're all very sad. Please forgive my casualness this morning. I left the house with the rain thing on and I forgot my jacket. We're going to shift the agenda around a little bit because we have the pleasure of installing a new officer this evening. So I'll ask Tom Ciliano to read the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have a very happy occasion this evening. We're going to appoint a new police officer. I'm going to read part of the chief's memo with respect to this young man. After successfully passing the interview process, background investigation, and screening examinations, a candidate has been selected for full-time employment to the Mount Pleasant Police Department. Mr. Daniel Lovett of Thornwood has been selected to fill a vacancy created by a retirement. I would respectfully request the hiring of Mr. Daniel Lovett to the position of a full-time probationary police officer for the town of Mount Pleasant effective January 2nd, 2020 as the prescribed starting salary, and it's signed Chief Oliva or Chief of Department.
Motion by Mr. Ciliano,
Second.
second by Ms. Smalley. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Chief, you want to do the honors?
Honorable Town Board, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Ciliano, thank you. You pretty much handled what I was looking to do. I just want to make a few additional comments. Mr. Lovett moved to Hawthorne with his family in 1995. He attended and graduated Iona Prep in 2014. Dan went on to college and attended Fordham University in the Bronx. He graduated from Fordham with a Bachelor of Arts degree majoring in sociology. He then entered the workforce, United Parcel Service, where he worked his way up into 2 separate supervisory positions. The customer service experience that he got working there is going to serve him well in his new career. He passed all of his necessary background information requirements, and so he's ready to go. So you already passed that motion, but thank you very much for your consideration, and welcome aboard. Daniel.
Chief,
Congratulations.
Swear you in? To be sworn in. Give you one for the photo, so if family members want to take pictures of you, they can. Raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Daniel Lovett,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United
and the
States
Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of
Mount Pleasant
Police officer
Police Officer
of the town of Mount Pleasant
of the town of Mount Pleasant
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Yay.
There you go.
I'll give it you tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Come on up.
Come on, everybody.
Family, wants to get a photo?
That's it.
Can we get a quick family? That's what being involved, because so he's part of the family now, so I'm extended family.
Let's get out of this way.
I'll take one with you and then I've got it. It's a little slow, sorry.
Can whoa, 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 whoa. I now need you to look this way.
I don't have to follow order.
It's like a wedding.
Good. You guys take a family picture if you want. There you go.
Thank you, everyone.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay. Moving on to the agenda, we have bids and awards. First item is award prepared meals for the Mount Pleasant Nutrition Program to Jonas Kitchen. It's a local business in Thornwood. As I think Councilwoman Gloria Smalley explained that Greenberg is no longer going to be doing it, so they had to go out for bids, and Jonas Kitchen won the bid.
Just to explain a little further, this is for bids for our Meals on Wheels program. It's administered by the Office of Elderly Americans here in Mount Pleasant, which is part of the Recreation Department. And again, as the supervisor just said, the Greenberg Kitchen, where we used to get meals, has gone out of business. They're ending by the end of the year. So a bid process was put into place, and happy to report that a local business did put a bid in, and they were awarded this job. So we're hoping for the best for Jonas Kitchen, local business here, and also for the 100 meals a day, Monday through Friday, that are served. Thank you.
Thank you. Need a motion to move forward with that bid?
Move for approval, please.
Motion by Ms. Smalley,
Second.
second by Mr. Saliano. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a public hearing. I'll ask the town clerk to read the notice.
Please take notice that a public hearing of the Town Board of the Town of Mount Pleasant will take place on Tuesday, December 17th, 2019, at 8:00 p.m. at the Town Hall located at 1 Town Hall Plaza, Valhalla, New York, 10595, to annex the property located at 26 Westerly Lane South, Thornwood, New York, and designated on the tax map as Section 112.06, Block 3, Lot 22, into the Kensico Water District, annexation number 1-2019. At this meeting, all persons shall be heard.
Thank
Susan
you.
Romo, Town Clerk.
Anyone wishing to speak on this petition is welcome to do so at this time. Being there are no speakers, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. DiPaolo, second by Ms. Smalley. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. On approving the connection into the Kensico Water District, this is for, as Susan had said, 26 Westerly Lane South. The Boydie family, they have had some water issues up there, so connecting into the water district is imperative. So on Resolution 61419 would allow the Boydie family to become part of the Kensico Water District.
Move for approval.
Motion by Mr. DiPaolo,
Second?
second by
Me.
Ms. Hagedis. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to my report. First thing is Purchase Order 162-1918. This is International Code Council review for 500 Summit Lake Drive. This is a full plan review for a fit out. Total cost for the review is $8,550. Yes, I know that the building permit fee more than covers that.
I'd like to make a motion for approval, please, Mr. Supervisor.
Motion by Mr. Saliano,
Second.
second by Ms. Smalley. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is authorization for the Assessors Department to hire a paid intern effective December 16th, 2019 until January 10th, 2020. This is a Westlake High School spring program. They would like to join. She worked with us in our spring program last year. She's now, this is Sean.
Sean.
I think it's a he.
It's a
He.
It's a him.
Sean Powers, a student at Manhattan College, very helpful and competent last spring. He's requesting a hire for those dates for $12 an hour.
Move for approval, please.
Motion by Ms. Smalley,
Second.
second by Mr. DiPaolo. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is authorization to hire part-time seasonal help for the Receiver of Taxes Department effective December 26th until February 4th, 2020, rate of $16 per hour. This is temporary help during the tax collection time.
Move for approval, please.
Motion by Ms. Hagedis,
Second.
second by Mr. DiPaolo. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is authorization to renew the insurance policies for 2020. We have insurance company Assured Partners. All of our insurance policies, generally, we see between a 3 and 5% increase every year. This year, luckily, we saw about a $24,000 decrease in our insurance. Workman's comp went down, and our general liability went down. So it's a welcome thing to see a lower cost on our insurance than we had actually budgeted. So this resolution will authorize me to sign the new insurance policies for 2020.
Move for approval, please.
Motion by Ms. Smalley,
Second.
second by Ms. Hagedis. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Generally, this time of the year, we have employees that were not able to use up their vacation time, so they request to carry them over. They're allowed to carry up to amount of 10 days, must be used by the end of January. We have go through the whole list. Brian Keneally, 5 days. Catherine Mack, 5 days. Michelle Knapp, 3 days. Building Department, Sal Pinelli, 5.5 days. Joe Brigante, 3 days. Teresa Fahey, 5 days. Carolyn Saraceno, 2 days. Receiver of Taxes Department, Nancy Venditti, 4 days. Police Department, Marty Rogers, 3 days. Captain Pierce, 7 days. Chief Oliva, 7 days. Highway Department, David Barker, 2 days. Maureen Reck, 5 days. Recreation Department, Scott Naylor, 3 days. John Petruselli, 5 days. Water and Sewer, Louis Johnson, 32 hours. Tommy Lyons, 8 hours. Raymond Goches, 16 hours. Thomas Clifford, 16 hours. Vincent Luzapone, 16 hours. Robert McCarthy, 16 hours. Anthony DiGregorio, 32 hours. Justice Court, Maria Ford, 3 days. Joanne Salvatore, 10 days. Assessor's Office, Susan Pekowitz, 17.5 hours. Supervisor's Office, Amanda Giusilli, 4 days. This resolution will enable them to carry over their vacation time to be used by the end of January.
Can I make a motion for approval, please?
Motion by Mr. Saliano,
Second.
second by Mr. DiPaolo. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. We have our receiver of taxes report. And before I go into business on the floor, I just want to, this is actually Francesca's last meeting and Nick DiPaolo's last meeting. Francesca, even though we were on different sides of the fence, I've always respected you, your opinion, and I thank you for the service that you gave to the town of Mount Pleasant.
Thank you very much. This year I've learned a lot, and I have understood what it is to be of service to the town of Mount Pleasant. I hope in some way to continue to be of service to our town. I've enjoyed our meetings, and my councilman to my left and I have shared some good laughs, and so have supervisor and I. We've certainly, I enjoy a sense of humor, and I will miss this gentleman looking over my shoulder over here each time. I have no idea who he is, and
You can take it home.
yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. And I would like to wish everyone a very, very happy holiday and an abundant new year. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman DiPaolo, you have been tremendous help to the town of Mount Pleasant. Your years of service, you have been especially of a great assistance to me as a deputy supervisor. You will be sorely missed as a councilman, as a deputy supervisor, but I know you're not going to be too far away, so you're reachable with your assistance. We hope that you're
If I pick up.
Mr. DiPaolo is going to be helping us when he can on communications throughout the year. So again, I thank you for your years of service to the town of Mount Pleasant, and hopefully we'll get you back here someday.
Thank you. I always thought it was weird when Academy Award winners have a prepared speech, because they're not supposed to know that they have something to say. I'm by no stretch a winner or an Academy Award winner, but I did know that this would be my last meeting, so I did prepare a little something to say. I would like to take a moment to express my sincere appreciation to the town of Mount Pleasant. 5 years ago, after an interviewing process, the town board appointed me to fill a vacancy. Most of them did not know me, and those that did knew very little about me. I was not politically connected, nor was I involved in town business. Rather, I belonged to numerous community service organizations and had a lot of experience with the town working in the schools. They trusted that I was seriously committed to serving the town. They took a chance on supporting me. That support was reaffirmed by town residents in 2016 when I won a contested election. I truly feel blessed to have served for 5 years. It has truly been a rewarding experience, although a significant amount of time and energy. And for that reason, I decided earlier this year to take a pause in my civic duties. My family had expanded, and I know I'll never be able to get back that precious time with my young children. And hearing the words, "Where are you going, Daddy?" when I leave the house several evenings each week made the decision very easy for me. I've always been told to leave things better than I found them. I'm proud of the tremendous improvements that the town has made over the last 5 years, and I'm eager to see things like the Hawthorne Revitalization Project begin to materialize, the Go Green programs that we implemented, and I'm honored to have helped bring our police department staffing levels back up to where they should be. I'm excited for the potential the North 60 holds, but I'm most proud of our board's efforts to keep taxes down and savings way up. I have considered it a privilege to work with the many wonderful staff and officials in Mount Pleasant. My one rule has always been to try to be the hardest working person in the room, and my colleagues have often made that a very difficult task. I humbly thank them. I know that we have some wonderful candidates waiting in the wings, and I look forward to our town continuing to be a very, very special place. And I thank everyone from the residents to the business owners and to all the great staff here in town. Thank you very much. It's been an honor.
Thank you. Just a note on the Nova system that we had started about almost 2 years in, I think, April. My assistant has worked very hard on this system, and we have been printing up agendas and all we've been leaving in the back since the inception of it. now that the system is up and running and it's running smooth and it's very informative, residents can get any information they want on the website. So as in 2020, we will be no longer printing those agendas and leaving them here. Our idea from the beginning was to cut back on the waste of paper and all that. As you may have noticed, we don't have piles of paper anymore. We stopped that a while back. And it used to bother the heck out of me after a meeting throwing away a stack of papers in the garbage, so we no longer do that. All the information is readily available for anyone in town at any time they want it, can see the information. So as of 2020, there will be no more agendas in the back. If you have any questions, you're welcome to call Amanda, and she'd be happy to answer any question. If there's something you would like on paper, she would be happy to print it for you. So, and that's that on that. I guess we'll move on to the town clerk's report. Oh, no, we got business from the floor. I'm sorry.
Yeah, business from the
We
floor.
don't want to stop that. Anybody wish to speak is welcome to do so at this time.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor and board members. My name is John Fisher. I'm a, figured out, 66-year resident of the town, and I speak first wearing that hat, but full confession, I'm also the vice chair of the Mount Pleasant Democratic Committee. So I want to first congratulate Francesca for having broken a glass or some kind of ceiling, because I realized she was probably the first Democrat to serve on the town board in over 30 years. And as someone who thinks the people are well served by a variety of points of view represented by within the governing body, I was very grateful of the way that the supervisor and you all accepted her as a foreign body. I know there are times perhaps when that was prickly, but I'd like to think, based on what I've known and read, that her service was very helpful to the town. I know that she pushed some issues that came to fruition, particularly the hotel tax issue, and perhaps there are others. And I just want to thank you all for being receptive to her, and I want to salute her service.
Thank you very much, John.
Did you sign in? Thank you.
My name is Jim Russell from Hawthorne, and I recently noticed when I was walking along Elwood Avenue that where the American Legion Veterans Memorial is, there's a large Hanukkah sign blocking the memorial. And I didn't notice any nativity scene nearby, so I had a question or two as to whether the town placed this sign in front of the American Legion Memorial.
The Recreation Department handles the decorations in town.
I see. And do you have any plans to have a nativity scene at that location?
I'd have to check with the Recreation Department, see what their plans are.
Well, I'd like to make a request that you do consider doing that, to have a nativity scene. And I think maybe the placement of the Hanukkah sign could be moved off a bit so it doesn't completely block the Veterans Memorial. If you could consider that also, I'd appreciate it.
There's a Christmas tree there.
There is. It's a secular symbol. Hanukkah sign is a religious one, and in most places where they have a Hanukkah menorah, they also have a Christmas
No, in
nativity
Pleasantville
scene.
they have a dreidel and a Christmas tree.
Okay, but in most places in America, they do have both.
We'll
And I think they
discuss
should.
We'll discuss this with the Recreation Department on their decorations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I would just add that, despite it maybe being a few feet off to the right or left, that I think it's wonderful that we finally have one in town, and I actually would take a different angle and applaud the progress of having the menorah there, and we can always make other improvements as we go.
So does that mean that you would not be in favor of having a nativity scene?
I did not say that.
Okay.
Okay, but if you are looking to put words in my mouth, you certainly could draw that conclusion, but I didn't say that.
Well, I guess you didn't plan on doing that either as a town board when you decide to put the...
We didn't, the recreation department, like I said before, handles the decorations in town.
Okay.
We will advise them of this.
Great. Thank you very much.
And by the way, Hanukkah is a very minor holiday.
It is, indeed. And
Just for the record, are you in favor of the menorah being there?
not if there's no nativity scene.
So as long as there's a nativity scene, you're okay with it?
Yes.
Anyone else like to address the board?
Did you sign it?
My name is Michelle Stefanov. I live in South
Could you
Kensington.
go to the mic so we could hear you? Thank you.
Better? I live on South Kensington Avenue and would like to make some comments about lights and night games at Pat Henry Field. We all support Little League. People who live on South Kensington Avenue have children who have played on Little League in the past and have children who will play on it in the future. This is not an us versus them situation. This isn't a game, this is our lives. The issue is safety and quality of life, and that's slowly being taken away from us. Years ago, there was a small Little League field. Games were played in the spring, and then the neighbors had their quiet street back. That was the charm of living on South Kensington Avenue. A brief Little League season that was fun to watch, and then a peaceful summer to enjoy. Neighbors could then again safely walk with strollers, ride bicycles, jog, or walk with their dogs. There was a basketball hoop on the street, and children enjoyed playing in the road. It would be suicidal for them to attempt that now. In 2011, Little League wanted lights on the field because they claimed their program had grown to 450 children, and demands for the fields had increased and made it a necessity to have lights. The neighbors on the street went to a meeting with Mr. Candria and were adamant that they didn't want lights on the field or night games. At the meeting, which had a very good turnout, not one neighbor spoke in favor of it. The councilman who had attended the meeting said he had heard enough and the plan would not move forward. Then in July 2019, Little League sends out a letter again claiming demands for the fields had increased and make it a necessity to have the lights. And yet there's over 100 less children participating than there was in 2011. There are other ball fields in town that would be much better options if Little League insists on night games, such as Bradhurst, where there's already lights, Virginia Road, where there's an intermunicipal agreement between the town and county, which owns the property, and it doesn't prohibit lights. As far as the so-called lighting expert for the field, he's the person who would be installing the lights and making money from the deal. How can he be considered an impartial expert? How much is he being paid and who's paying for it? Regarding the police chief saying that there was little speeding on the street, is that any surprise? Anytime cars are clocked, people see the device tracking them, and what do? They slow down. So that was a pretty meaningless undertaking. How about talking to the people who actually live on the street and ask them what their experiences have been? People who actively walk on the street can tell you all sorts of horror stories of what's happened to them. Speeding cars, having to jump out of the way so they don't get hit, and distracted drivers on their phones or turning around to talk with their children in the back seat. Just because someone hasn't gotten hit yet doesn't make it safe. I've had cars flash the lights on me for driving too slow, rode my bumper, and one time I had a Little League dad drive around me so he'd get to the field. It's a miracle I've been able to back into my driveway without being hit. As far as the police chief's assertion that over 3,000 cars drove down the street on a 12-day period, even if we have that amount to account for cars coming and going, that's still a tremendous amount of traffic for a little dead-end street. We don't live on the Bronx Parkway. Isn't this all the more reason why we should be limiting the use of the field, not expanding it? And finally, when we as residents tell you it's unsafe, we're saying that because it's unsafe. There's simply too much traffic on the road now when games are going on, and that's what's happening in the daytime. Do we really want to compound the problem with night games? As it is, with all this additional traffic, what will happen if an emergency vehicle needs to get down our street? And don't get me started on the problem of people unfamiliar with a railroad crossing trying to navigate at nighttime. They're not doing too well during the daytime. And Mr. Fulgenzi, you had stated in 2015, the Cleveland Street Railroad crossing is the worst in town and it has had too many close calls. The bottom line is this: we're not opposed to Little League and never have been. We all moved here knowing full well there is a baseball field. We think it's a wonderful outlet for children, but it needs to be done in a safe manner for all. How can anyone logically think this is a good idea, the safety of neighbors versus nighttime fun for children?
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Anyone else like to address the board?
Sir, did you sign in?
Scott McIntyre, South Kensico Ave. I just want to say I got the memo that was sent out. Thank you for that. I guess in answer to some of the questions we had. The first paragraph, it says some of the research and findings, so I was wondering, will there be follow-up memos on other things, or?
There's additional things we're working on, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. Couple of questions. The traffic speed study, you gave the date for one of the two occurrences, which is October 4th to the 15th, but the other one in April, it didn't say, it just said April, it didn't say when. Is it possible to get a copy of these reports so we can see? Because I don't know if the other one was taken during the Little League season or not. Somebody said it wasn't, but maybe it was. But again, I agree that it should have been taken during the season when we see what's going on. The roadway lighting, I noticed the chief said it was adequate for the area, but I was just wondering what the criteria was that was based on. Was it based on the speed for the area, the width of the road, the pedestrian traffic, the sight distance? I mean, I'm just curious what the parameters were or criteria that he used to say that it was adequate. Not that he's wrong,
We could look into those details. Generally, if residents call and say, there's a dark spot here, can you put another light in, we generally would do that.
Right. But it wasn't based on measurement of foot candles or lighting? Or
I was there for the conversation that he had, and he even said there are no real technical parameters to what says what's good versus what's not, but like things like blind spots or dark spots or hidden areas or unsafe spots for pedestrians to be walking, things like that. So it was just his judgment based on his experiences. He didn't use any sort of technical formula to determine.
So it's a judgment call that he has. I mean, again, I'll just say, not to dispute him because he's got a lot of experience, but if you live there, you have even more direct experience. So I would just ask the board to take that in consideration, because comparing it to other areas,
and lighting,
but the actual usage of it on a daily basis, we become much more familiar with what the pros and cons are.
Of course, and I think lighting, regardless of the Little League lighting coming into play or not, if that's an issue down there, I think the town's more than willing to address it.
Right. But I mean, the main issues we talked about, the width of the road, the car traffic, many people on that road commute to the city. That's one of the reasons why people move to that particular location, right? Because they can walk to the train and not have to get in a car. So there's I would say, compared to most other places, a lot of foot traffic versus other roads, and often at night.
I would welcome any recommendations on additional lighting on the street if you found it.
That's what I was going to ask.
If the residents found it like a dark spot, we'd be happy to work on that.
Okay. The talk about the storage containers on the field, and you talk about you've spoken to Little League, but I would ask that the residents, particularly the ones that live adjacent to the field get a chance to have some input into whatever is being proposed?
I went down there and looked at the containers to try to see if there was a desperate need to have the 3 containers there. I was surprised the amount of equipment and materials that are necessary to run the operation.
Right.
What we were going to discuss is possibly consolidating them maybe so that they're not all spread out, maybe look a little bit neater, maybe some type of screening. Those are the things we had talked about.
Okay. So I would just ask if the residents get involved with those discussions. So whatever is ultimately proposed, that they have some say in it, since they raised the concern. The other question I had was, we gave, the residents gave a presentation a while back to the workshop, and I think the Little League was in prior to that to talk to the town board at the workshop. Did they have a presentation that we could see or get a copy of?
That was mostly a discussion. We didn't have a presentation, no.
So they weren't required to give a presentation in advance?
We had a presentation by the light for the lighting,
Okay.
because we had concerns about the lighting, where it would be directed and all that.
But they weren't required to have a presentation
No,
submitted?
I mean,
neither were the residents weren't required to have a
Yeah.
presentation.
Well, I thought we were required to have the presentation in a certain number of days before the workshop.
No.
I mean,
No,
the-
I believe that folks came to us and asked if they could present to us.
Right.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
we had to get it in a certain time before.
Well, if you want to present on a Tuesday, you have to have that presentation to us, to our supervisor's office in advance of that. Absolutely.
Okay, but for workshops, we don't have to schedule if it's not a presentation.
Yes.
Just to come
Work
in-
sessions have, if you want to come and present, you have to.
So then,
schedule it.
if we did that, we're not constrained by only one person being able to speak or a time limit?
I mean, there's some parameters. It depends what's going on for that work session. I mean, you have to contact the supervisor's office, see when you're looking to come in, see what other presentations are going on that evening, so on and so forth.
I was just curious, because we had only one person could speak, and there was a time limit, so I didn't know if that was...
That's generally the
that's
case with
general
presentations.
case.
We just had one that we had to cut short because we had a meeting coming up at 8 o'clock, so happens often. I will say that I believe Kensico Little League did do a presentation. I don't know that it's a PowerPoint, but it was a presentation verbally to us and with the lighting vendor there as well.
But it wasn't a written, I mean, there's not a copy that we
No,
can
we
get?
took notes.
No, it
Took
was
Okay.
notes.
Are the notes available?
Each person took their own notes. In other words, they told us how many games would be played and the schedule of the games and how often and things like that. But it was all a verbal presentation, and we wrote down what we heard.
Okay. So relative to the games, we've made a request to get, as we talked about before, to get a record of the games scheduled over the years, because again, we perceive there's been a market increase, which the other speaker alluded to. Can you tell me what the status is of the consideration of the lights at the
We
moment?
received, just recently received a schedule of games that they used last year.
Okay.
Nothing's been established for 2020 yet as far as games.
Okay.
As far as what would be the difference between night games and day games, a lot of things affect the schedule. Could be rain, and mostly rain. The weather conditions affect the schedule considerably. So they may have a certain amount of games scheduled, but it varies. But eventually they will have an established schedule of games that they are proposing for 2020.
Right, but there's a plan.
Yeah.
So we're trying to get history of the plans over the years.
I received the one for this 2019, and we could request other ones if they can produce them.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I think it's helpful to get something in writing, what the schedule would look like. I mean, the parents get the schedule, so the residents should be able to get a schedule as well, I would say.
Again, this is information we want to have, but again, it's the quality of life, it's the safety, and that's what we're concerned about. And to reiterate, this came up in 2005. We asked them when they did the improvements. They said they had no plans at that time. It came up in 11. It came up in 15 briefly, but that was when there was an accident, so that was killed. So again, we would say, it's come up at least 3 times and been negated, and we say, what has changed? If anything, it's been more apparent that you have to be careful at the crossings, right? And you have a restaurant there, again with propane. You have parking at the restaurant, which I will say every single day there's illegal parking at the restaurant. Okay, and just to go back, when they added parking in front of the restaurant, which used to be no parking, I was told that they could add that without site plan approval. So I would ask if you could look into that and give me a reading on where it says in the code, town code, that no site plan is required to change parking there, because that parking is very dangerous.
Mr. McIntyre, I would like to ask you a question, please.
Sure.
Several speakers, in fact yourself, alluded to the fact that the road is very narrow. And I know that road has wetlands, and it's been a rural neighborhood for quite a while. But one thing I do see, and you just mentioned it when you just brought it up and said illegal parking at the restaurant. In my calculation, I have been down to that site many times, and I see at least 10, if not more, off-street parking, which occurs on the right-of-way of the town of Mount Pleasant. I would ask the residents to consider looking into why does that off-street parking exist? Are there permits for it? Is this something that the town of Mount Pleasant has just allowed to occur? And if so, if using those off-street parking places would expand or widen the road, that could perhaps be one of the remedies to making the road safer and putting 2 lanes, wider 2 lanes on that road if possible. It would be a big project, but stating that there's illegal parking at the restaurant, although I understand because we've had many discussions in regard to the train station there and keeping it open, closing it. You know, we had the MTA here. It is a questionable crossing, but my other point is that although many people think that it's an unsafe neighborhood in regard to Little League and expanding programs and utilizing lights, I often question then why, when there is such an unsafe train crossing there, why are we not considering closing that? Why are we not considering expanding the road, widening the road there? Why is there parking on the town right-of-way on South Kensico Avenue, when in fact it could be, as you just said in regard to the restaurant, illegal?
Well, I'm talking about the restaurant. It's marked no parking.
I don't believe that parking on the town right-of-way is
Well,
legal,
I take
although-
that as a kind of a threat, but okay.
No, it's not a threat, it's a
I'm
statement.
speaking about the signs that are put up, I would imagine by the town, that say no parking, and the striping that says no parking there.
So you're talking
And
about...
you're talking about an intersection that you know there's a lot of activity, right? So I'm just pointing out, and it used to be that there was striped no parking completely in front of the restaurant. Then 4 spaces were added, and I can show you a picture of a car that had backed up and jumped the curb and was hanging almost into the Taconic, because to back up from those spaces, you have to back up into the roadway. That's that short duration between the Taconic and the railroad crossing to get out.
Right.
So they park where you're not supposed to park, close to the railroad tracks. They park next to the building where they're not supposed to park. I'm just...
No, I agree with you. I actually go there a lot, so I do see
Yeah,
that happen a
I
lot.
mean,
I will say, I know that I think 1 or 2 of the spots are handicapped accessible, which, not that they are, in my estimation, the
But they- but
safest
not
handicapped
next to the
accessible
building.
spots. Not right in those 4 spots?
No, those are on the other side, the first 10 or
Oh,
whatever spaces.
so you're talking about the side closer
I'm
to
saying
Cleveland Street?
right in front of the first part of the restaurant.
Understood.
The caboose.
Gotcha, okay.
So, I'm speaking of that relative to all the activity goes there, especially the pedestrians, the people coming off the train and crossing, right? And that's another one of the issues we raised, the number of people that cross at night, especially. Okay, thank you.
We're presently in discussion with the owners of the restaurant, and parking is one of the issues that came up, so we're going to continue that conversation with the town attorney and them.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else like to address the board?
Hello, my name's Colin Rim. You can probably guess where I live. It's a joke. South Kensico Avenue. I had a couple of follow-up questions, following up on my neighbor's questions and also following up on some of the issues that were raised at the work session back in October. So I'm not going to repeat the same thing that's been said over and over again, but did want to ask a couple specific questions. At a board meeting in April of 2015, it sounds like the issue of lights on Little League fields was discussed, and the supervisor had the following response. He said, "You said years ago they came to us. It is not our belief that we should increase traffic that is in a dangerous site. I don't think we are going anywhere with lights at this point." And so one of the things that many of us have alluded to, but we haven't really gotten an answer, is if anything has changed to make the street, the crossing, and everything safer to justify adding lights at the field.
As you may recall, we had extensive discussion about the crossing. It was, I put a lot of effort into trying to close the crossing and creating a bypass road. The neighborhood did not want it. They made it very clear.
Did the state come forward with the $15 to $30 million that was quoted to regrade?
It was irrelevant. Nobody wanted it.
Okay.
So they were going to support financially the new road.
Okay. So has anything changed? In other words,
the town residents in that area did not want the crossing closed, so that stopped that discussion.
So, in other words, has anything changed?
Has anything changed since what?
Since you said that in 2015, regards to the safety of the street and the crossing.
The crossing is no safer than it was in 2015.
Okay, thank you. A couple other questions just to follow up on.
But can I just ask just a question on your point?
Sure.
Are you suggesting that now there are going to be more people going through the crossing, or just at a different time?
At nighttime.
Understood. So it's just a different time, not necessarily more people crossing.
Yeah, I mean, as we showed at the work session, pedestrian fatalities are much higher at night. Train crossing incidents are much higher
I
at night.
totally get that. I was just wondering if you're asking that question in relation to there being more people
we
crossing, or if it was just
as
different
mentioned by the previous speaker, we do have concerns that having lights will increase the number of games.
Okay.
It obviously makes the field more appealing, opens it up to potentially tournaments, extends the season, all of that. So we have concerns about increasing traffic, but just at baseline levels of traffic, have concerns with the additional, not the additional, but the kind of moving traffic from earlier in the day to later.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification. I was wondering if when the Little League presented at their work session with the board, if they mentioned that they'd be receiving any additional revenue by putting in lights, i.e. through hosting additional tournaments, opening the field up to neighboring Little Leagues. Was that discussed at all?
No.
No.
And then my last question is, I've heard, and we all hear things, many things are true and many things are not true, that the other field on Virginia Road, that lights are not allowed. I've also heard that lights are allowed, and I was wondering, that's a much more suitable location for a variety of reasons. It's on a arterial, it's not in a residential neighborhood, and I was wondering if it would be appropriate to look into that, to find and to share with the residents that that is truly not something that's allowed per the agreement with the county.
That field is what is called a legacy field.
Yes.
And we would have to actually contact Westchester County and really discuss with them how they define a legacy field and what can go there.
Okay.
That's truly, Mount Pleasant does not lease that field. We lease Pat Henry Park for the use of Kensico Little League.
Okay.
So,
And I think the other issue too is that we're not funding the installation or the
Right.
purchase of the lights, so that would be very much in conversation with the Kensico Little League. But I could seeing how much money and energy they put into their field currently. I wouldn't assume that they would go for that quickly, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It's definitely an alternative that came up, and I thought it was a good alternative, but it's a lot of other conversations that are.
As you might guess, many of us who live on the street would have little reticence about placing lights at that field. At least I do not. And I'd like to thank Supervisor for sending the memo and sharing information back with the neighborhood. It's much appreciated. and obviously look forward to more of that in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to address the board?
Hi, my name is Mary Flynn. I'm one of those residents that will be impacted by the lights. I live pretty close to the ball field, not right on top of it, but maybe 4 or 5 houses away. Oh, and Mrs. Smalley, I'm speaking as myself personally, we would welcome any improvements to safety on South Kensico, whether that's widening the road and, not being able to park on the other side would be totally fine. I wish, though, in hindsight, when the town expanded the parking lot, that they could have taken into consideration the safety concerns with expanding that parking lot.
The commuter lot?
Yeah, I mean, there's only one way in and one way out. There's tremendous safety concerns. I take the train every day. The one little stop sign, not doing the job. People go through the stop sign. People at night can't see the stop sign, so that's of great concern to me. I take the train every day to work. I come home late at night, and I'm a nurse, so it's always dark when I'm walking down the street. Certainly expanding the street would be great, but there are no sidewalks, as you know. Putting up extra lights might help, but I don't think so. So I just have a quick statement to make. Again, excuse me if I'm repeating what was said already, but no one is against kids playing Little League Baseball under a reasonable field use policy. However, does Little League and the town board really believe that the owners of adjacent homes are going to be happy with the interruptions to their sleep from 70-foot lights and noise from a PA system at night? Quality of life is a subjective term that measures happiness, but we are paying way too much taxes to not get the quality of life that we are paying for. That is completely unacceptable, no matter what the town board has determined. I have some questions. How many nights of the year will the lights be on? Will there be third-party usage? Who will determine who uses the field at night? And will this possibly be for profit? I don't know the answer to that question. Will events that begin during daylight hours be allowed to continue at night? This proposal, in my opinion, is a complete waste of energy, resources, and money. Finally, by allowing night games at Pat Henry, Mount Pleasant will likely incur a host of unexpected costs related to increased law enforcement, traffic mitigation, and even public nuisance lawsuits. Thank you.
Anyone else like to address the board?
Good evening. My name is Figgis. I live on South Kensico Avenue, and also want to talk about the Little League. In our presentation that we did, well, that Alan's wife did, we looked at the lease and put in the presentation that the county basically owns the property, you guys lease from it, but that their agreement is the final agreement. Is that how you guys understand it? I think it's section 2.4 that says if there's any other agreement, that this agreement overrides any conflict if there is anything. It's in the lease. Anybody aware of that? So section 2.4, so is it 2.4? Or 2.2 maybe. But it's in the lease there that says that if there's so that lease overrides any. So the lease then states that the county park shall be available to all Westchester County residents, right? So the athletic field complex accommodate for public or park purposes in accordance with the terms and conditions of section B. So that's the other thing. So basically anybody can use that field. Am I understanding that correctly? Yes. So if they put lights up there does that mean that if somebody wants to have an event there in the evening, is there anything the board can do to prevent something like that?
They respect the control that the Recreation Department and Kensico Little League have on the use of the field.
Who's we, sorry?
The county.
Who's we?
County.
So the
County
county,
of Westchester.
I get that, but from my understanding here is they already state that it's available to the Westchester County residents, so.
As a county park, it's available.
Right.
There is an agreement, people have referred to it as different things, handshake agreement, verbal agreement, sort of a precedence over time that Kensico Little League has exclusive use of that field. And that's been the case for, I don't know how long, a very long time. So, that is the case, that technically as a county park, people have access, but the county has also respected the fact that the Little League uses it and has exclusive use to it, and they've respected that.
I understand. So people in principle, I understand that that would work. But if I was a motivated individual, do you see how I could say, okay, I have access to this field and I can just use it, and there's no recourse at this time?
Right. So access to county fields, they would have to go to the county, office and get permits, and people would have to file permits and get approval from them to use the field. Yes, and I agree with you. As a motivated individual, if you wanted to try that, you could. I don't know what the response would be at this point from the county. I have my own worries and concerns that if Kensico Little League decides that this field is not good for them anymore and they decide to move elsewhere, I do have concerns of what will happen to that field down there, being that it is a county field.
Right. Okay. So my other question is, let's play. It's a little bit hypothetical, and I apologize. Hypotheticals are always terrible, but if they do get lights in there, right, and my understanding is they want to play one additional game late at night at Friday. Now, I'm thinking logically, the overwhelming cost of putting in those lights, right? So you're telling me they're going to spend that much money so they can play one game a night? It seems a little bit unrealistic. And once you have lights at there, does that field kind of becomes, I would almost say, a premier field to some extent? Would you not want to then utilize that field more?
Well, I think it's a hypothetical, but
Yeah.
I think I have to take you back quite a few years when what we call the field was flipped.
Right.
Okay? If you look at it now, where home plate is and the concession stand, that was on the other side. It was a volunteer effort, and I'm not sure I have the numbers right, but I believe it's $500,000 was raised by the volunteers. The manpower was the volunteers. They were all together from the Kensico Little League. The county did sign off, as we know, because I've looked at the plans with the supervisor and his administrative assistant, and the county was very aware of the plans to utilize that field after it was, quote, flipped. Okay? My understanding from this issue over the last few months and from sitting with the Recreation Commission is that financing lights, again, would be a volunteer effort. This is nothing that has come to the town. There's been no request for money at all. As it was given, the request was given to the Recreation Commission as something that Kensico Little League would support. As far as one game a week or late night games, which you said, I focus again on the intent of that field. The use of that field is for Little League from ages 4 through 12. So we're not talking about late night games. Okay? As far as the amount of games, I can't address that because that's not my purview. That would be with the Little League. So I hope that has answered some of your questions.
I just want to clarify. I was not talking about the cost. I'm well aware that they're fully covering the cost. That was not my concern, and that wasn't part of my hypothetical. What I was presenting was the idea that if once you have lights on the field, paid for by the Little League, and the amount of money they invest, so they spend $500,000 upgrading the field. They're going to spend a substantial amount of money putting in the lights. What I'm saying is, what you're doing is you're increasing the attractiveness of that field, right? And you're increasing the amount of time that field can be utilized, potentially. That's what I'm talking about. So now that that potential exists in that field, what stops the Little League from adding one extra game, or 2 extra games, or 3 extra games down the line, right? But right now we say that we have a handshake agreement, but over 2 years, over 3 years, over 4 years, that could change, right?
Well, no, the handshake agreement I was talking about has to do with the county.
The handshake agreement would be that they would only play one game, right? They would only play one Friday night.
No, I wasn't speaking to that.
But I'm just saying.
Right, that's what
would be-
they're telling us.
I would
right?
imagine that would be the agreement for
Well-
the lights to go in, that they say they're only going to play Friday nights, right?
Well, it's hypothetical.
Could I make a suggestion? My suggestion was to have a written agreement between the town, the community, and Kensico Little League with the parameters of what you can and cannot do as a result of putting in the lights. If I was a resident, I'd be fearful of well, how many games are going to be there? When are they going to be? And how's it going to affect my world? So I think if you define that and you put it in writing and it's an agreement where there's X amount of games, or X amount of games can be played per night, and it's reasonable for all parties, then I think then all of us are going to be happy and all of us are going to be satisfied. Right now, if the doubt is how many extra games as a result of the lights, how is it going to affect my world? How is it going to affect traffic? So you have to have some kind of agreement between all parties where it's defined and it's clear.
Right. But I don't think an agreement like that addresses some of the other issues of, like we're talking about the quality of life and how the street is affected. I believe you suggested, okay, why don't we make the street wider? Why don't we put lights in? Why don't we remove the parking, right? So it sounds like you're saying, okay, to get the lights in, we can change the neighborhood, but it's going to change our entire quality of life, the community's quality of life, to have a bigger street so that the baseball can have lights so that they can play one extra game at night. It sounds a little bit ludicrous that's kind of
I think we're getting caught up in so much extraneous issues. The real issue was, and the request was, to be able to light the field, to have evening games for Little League players that play softball and baseball during the Little League season. And it was a very simple request, and we've spent months on this issue, and we've spent hours, and I'm sure we'll spend more time on this issue. The key word here is compromise, and I think that's where we have to go. So I respect and I appreciate you asking the questions, but hypothetically, there's nothing else I can say.
All right. It just sounds like what you're saying is that it's a simple issue, just put in lights so they can play baseball, whereas what we're presenting is that it is actually a much more complex issue than just simply putting lights so they can play once on a Friday night.
It's obvious that it's more complex. That's
Yes,
why we've been
it's a
talking
simple
about this
request.
for 8 months. But we understand that it is complex. If it wasn't complex, it would have been pushed through a long time ago.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to address the board?
My name is Mark Stefanov. I live at 129 South Kensico. Mrs. Smalley,
Yes.
you mentioned at the work session that Legion Drive is a busy street. I'm glad you mentioned that when we were talking about the Lake Bridge.
I believe that was in discussion to another issue.
Yeah, it was at the Lake Bridge Child Care Center, okay? I wanted you were talking about a traffic study, and you mentioned Legion Drive, Columbus, and Broadway. The study should be done on. You should also look at Howard and High Street, because a lot of people, a lot of local residents, use that as a cut-through. They use that as a cut-through to get to 287 as well as to the train station. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I'm
I
aware.
don't know if you've been aware. You've been over Howard
Yes.
and High Street, so you know
Yes,
they're
I know
very
who
narrow.
lives there.
Okay.
Yes.
So a lot of people using that daycare center will also be cutting through there to get to the train station as well as to 287.
Well, I think that's why I asked for a traffic study,
Right.
so that we
But you
can...
didn't mention those streets. They need to do this traffic study, including those streets.
When
I mentioned
a
those
traffic
for
study is
that.
done, it's done encompassing an surrounding radius, so it'll.
Well, I mentioned that to developers that they should, because they weren't aware of that street behind there, that's used as a cut-through, but it is used as a cut-through. So that should be looked into. I just wanted to bring that up before talking about in the Little League field. And I'd like to thank Laura Senti for her common sense and forethought in the Kensico Little League debate. Rather than installing lights and ruining the quality of life in a residential area of the town, Kensico Little League should consider putting lights at the Virginia Road Bronx Reservation Field, or better yet, have a state-of-the-art field built on the North 60 development with bleachers and lights and call it Candria Field. Advantages are central location, numerous roads for egress of traffic, no residential area, and with the planned restaurants and shops, it would add to the overall experience of the Little Leaguers. Also consider that someday we will lose the Valhalla Crossing, and the caravan of cars going to and from the field will have to navigate a 10% grade. That road that you proposed, the reason the residents were going to say, that's a 10% grade, that's a steep road. Do you know what a 10% grade is? I used to live in Avon, Connecticut. We had about 30 people killed on a 10% grade.
Okay, I didn't engineer the road. Okay?
I know you did.
And it's not a final design anyway.
Right, but it was a 10% grade. I discussed it with the town engineer.
Let me finish, all right?
Yes.
You can talk. We didn't finish that design. It was a proposal. There was nothing finalized.
I know.
It was a thought about
I
this
have
is
the plan.
something we can do.
Right.
Okay?
Correct.
But the neighbors did not want it. We
Correct.
stopped it.
Correct.
Okay?
Correct, but at someday, if the crossing is closed, there will be a 10% grade hill.
I don't know that. We would have to find out when it's engineered.
Well, if you look at the house...
I don't know
and
if you were
stuff-
an engineer or not. I didn't know that.
Actually, my whole family is engineers.
Of course, of course.
Of course.
Well, naturally.
But, and I took pictures of the site today.
Of course you did,
So-
yes.
And also, so it'll be a steep hill and a very narrow, 1 mile long street. It'll contend with, and it'll have to contend with the horrible traffic on Legion Drive, which Smalley happened to say, it's horrible traffic. You know
It
that.
is, I know, I live here.
So this idea makes the most sense. I've already reached out to Ferrari Associates about such a proposal. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe next time we could do without the comments toward an individual who's dedicated a tremendous amount of his lifetime making our community a better place. And maybe you should maybe organize your energies into doing the same instead of making a slight at a gentleman who made a great Little League. You should think about that.
Anyone else want to address the board?
Did you sign in? No.
Hi, Kim Van Kuren, 31-year resident of South Kensico.
Kim, I can't hear you. Can you get closer? Thank you.
31-year resident of South Kensico. That whole time, my neighbors, current neighbors and previous neighbors, we've had a very symbiotic and caring, or I guess symbiotic relationship with the Little League. My sons have played Little League. My husband has coached Little League. I have played softball. Sports is a beautiful thing. I'm a retired educator. It's important. And we have a nice relationship. We look forward to watching that parade every year. And we'd like to keep it that way, I guess. And I feel like it's really, putting us at odds against a great organization of people that volunteer and do wonderful things for our community. And we want to keep it that way. Our little street, the way it is, I'm a walker. We have those wetlands there. I saw a great blue heron fly in front of my house this week. It's spectacular. I mean, they're so vibrant. And the Little League is part of that. Pat Henry is incredible. I don't know how many people know that, but Pat Henry was a woman. And I think it's amazing that we have a Little League field named after a woman. And I grew up on upstate, and we had a sandlot baseball field down the way. It reminds me of what I grew up to. It's obviously more in the 21st century type ball field, but again, I don't like all the pitting against an organization that's good, and yet our neighbors and the quality of life is really important to us. We pay high taxes. We love it here. We don't want to have to go. And again, I just want to end on a positive note. If we can work something out for all of us, and that would be just keeping things the way they are. I think upping the level of more games and late night games is what we're afraid of. additional, the additional games at night, so. Thank you for hearing me out.
Anyone else wish to address the board? Further speakers, I'll move on to the town clerk's report.
Town clerk's agenda, December 17th, 2019, town board meeting. Bid opening, prepared meals for Mount Pleasant Nutrition Program. Received supervisor and registrar's report November 2019. Received building department report November 2019. Received 2019 Hawthorne Fire District election. Received 2019 Valhalla Fire District Commissioner election. 5 planning board resolutions. Shelbourne Assisted Living Facility Site Plan Approval. Shelbourne Assisted Living Facility Secret Negative Declaration. Shelbourne Assisted Living Facility Steep Slope Permit Approval. David Rockefeller Creative Arts Center Site Plan Approval. David Rockefeller Creative Arts Center Secret and Negative Declaration. And the town clerk's office would like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy New Year. Thank you.
Very nice, Sue. Thank you.
I'm done.
You're selling passes for your...
I'm gonna wait till January.
Okay.
For the commuter lot, okay.
Moving on to our council reports, Councilman DiPaolo.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Good evening to the public. On behalf of the Comptroller's Office, I have this week's Comptroller's Memo. And out of the Department GF prepaid expenses, we have Granicus, and that's for our Novus Agenda system, and that is a total of $11,371.43. Out of Receiver of Taxes line, we have Hudson Printing and Graphics, and this is for remittance envelope for our tax bills. It's $1,077. Out of the prepaid expenses line, we have Vermont Systems. This is maintenance, and that is for $4,998. Out of the Recreation Center line, we have Sprague Energy Corp., and this is for some bioheat at the community center, and that is $3,062.93. Highway Garage Roof Repair line, Abbott and Price, roof renovation project, $371,421.99. Reminder, that is a bonded project. Out of the Kensico Capital Projects line, we have professional consulting, we have engineering services, and that was $16,771.50. Out of the prepaid expenses line, we have Time Systems International, and this is a maintenance agreement for $1,965. Out of the Kensico Water line, we have PVS Mini Bulk Incorporated. It's for some sodium hypochlorite, and that is $3,899.80. Shannon Chemical Corp., additional chemicals, we have $17,150.64. Grand total of this week's Comptroller's Memo is $431,718.29. Respectfully submitted by Catherine Mack, our Deputy Controller. I would move for approval to pay the bills.
Motion by Mr. DiPaolo.
Second.
Second by Mr. Saliano. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
That was a record.
That was a short
That
one.
was a short one.
Christmas.
First time.
Christmas bonus.
Okay, second item on the agenda for the Comptroller's Office is an authorization to make final lump sum payout for our Comptroller Department employee, Catherine Mack. That payout, bear with me one second, is going to be $4,561.24. And this is for accumulated vacation and comp time. I would move for approval.
Motion by Mr. DiPaolo.
Second.
Second by Ms. Smalley. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And the third item on the Comptroller's agenda for this evening is authorization to request the hiring of Catherine Mack as a consultant in the Comptroller's Office. This would be at a rate of $55 an hour, not to exceed 35 hours per week for a period of 3 months. Again, we will have a void in that department, and we do need the personnel to assist with the daily duties. So I would move for approval to hire Ms. Mack.
Motion by Mr. DiPaolo.
Second.
Second by Ms. Hagedis. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. DiPaolo. Councilman Saliano.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My report is from the Police Department. We have several items from PD this evening for you. There's a few purchase orders. The first one is purchase order number 30-20-01, maintenance service contract with Goosetown Communications, and the total price is $6,000. I move for approval, please.
Motion by Mr. Saliano,
Second.
second by Ms. Smalley. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. The second item, Mr. Supervisor, is a purchase order. It's 30-20-02. It's 2020 lease payments for a copier. This is for the office. Again, these are yearly contracts. The vendor is Great American Financial Services. And God bless. And the total price is $3,500. I move for approval, please.
Motion by Mr. Saliano,
Second.
second by Mr. DiPaolo. We had a tie there, I
I
think.
was going to defer.
Yes, okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. The third item is purchase order number 30-20-03, 2020 lease payments for a copier. This is for the police desk. Again, these are yearly contracts. The vendor is Delage Layden Financial Services Incorporated. The total price is $1,000. I move for approval, please.
Motion by Mr. Saliano,
Second.
second by Ms. Smalley. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Great. The fourth item is a purchase order number 30-20-04. This is for police software. The vendor is Thomason Reuters West Payment, and the total price is $6,270.60. I respectfully ask the board for a motion of approval, please.
Motion by Mr. Saliano,
Second.
second by Mr. DiPaolo. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I believe we're on the fifth one, purchase order 30-20-05, 2020 monthly cable service. Optimum is the vendor. The total price is $4,164.44. I move for approval, please, for this purchase order.
Motion by Mr. Saliano,
Second.
second by Ms. Haggis. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. The sixth item is a purchase order number 30-20-06, Records Data Management System. The vendor is Admit Computer Services Incorporated. The total price is $34,858. I move for approval, please.
Motion by Mr. Saliano,
Second.
second by Ms. Smalley. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 7 from the Police Department is the purchase order number 30-20-07, Digital Policy Manual, Standard Operating Procedure, Management. This is for PD. The vendor is Power DMS. The total price is $6,306.31. I move for approval, please.
Motion by Mr. Saliano,
Second.
second by Ms. Smalley. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Great. And the last item, Mr. Supervisor, is authorization to hire an alternate school crossing guard effective January 6, 2020. We would like to hire Joanne Paparella at the rate of $15.25 per hour effective January 6th. This hire will assist in supplementing the current crossing guards in the event they are not available and negate the need to use a police officer to cover vacant school crossings. I move for approval to hire this school crossing guard, please.
Motion by Mr. Saliano,
Second.
second by Ms. Haggis. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And that's my report. Have a great holiday. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilwoman Smalley.
Good evening. My report this evening is from the Department of Parks and Recreation. The first item is purchase order 70-19-34, Community Center Doors. The vendor will be the Lock House of Elwood Avenue in Hawthorne. It's replacing original doors from 1997. We've obtained proposals from LI Automatic Doors, lock house, and a preferred locksmith quote. The total cost is $3,150. Move for approval, please.
Motion by Ms. Smalley,
Second.
second by Mr. Soriano. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mr. Supervisor, I respectfully request to abstain.
Mr. DeBoer is reading. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is purchase order 70-19-35, LED floodlights for the community center. The vendor is Light Concepts Airy Lighting Supply. These are for 8 floodlights at $450 each. Proposals were obtained from Light Concepts, JT Roselle Lighting Company, and Benfield Electrical Supply. Total cost, $3,600. Move for approval, please.
Motion by Ms. Smalley,
Second.
second by Mr. DiPaolo. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
The next item is purchase order 70-19-36, Community Center Benches. The vendor is Barco Products of Batavia, Illinois. The description: 2 8-foot Georgetown recycled plastic benches, cedar color, to be used in front of the community center. 2 benches at $898.85. The shipping cost is $253. The total cost is $2,050.70. The town of Mount Pleasant uses mainly 2 companies for pool and community center benches, Barco Products and Belson Outdoors. After receiving the quotes, Barco was selected as their handrails will be better for seniors. And for those of you in town, you know that this community center is used many days a week by the senior citizens here. Move for approval, please.
Motion by Ms. Smalley,
Second.
second by Mr. Soriano. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
The next item is memo number 75, authorization for 4 Recreation Department employees to attend the Pool and Spa Show, January 28th through the 30th, 2020. The show will be held in Atlantic City. John Petrozelli, Nick Gaspari, Elizabeth Linsalato, and 1 pool staff member will attend. The cost will not exceed $1,200. Cost to include lodging, travel, and meals. Move for approval, please.
Motion by Ms. Smalley,
Second.
second by Mr. DiPaolo. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. The last item on the list tonight is memo number 78, authorization to hire part-time recreation assistants effective December 13th, 2019. AJ Abate at $20 an hour, Jackie Sassatum at $20 an hour, Eric Rizzi at $20 an hour, and Jason Osiello at $15 an hour. They will be working special events, Ken Fisher basketball, adult basketball, building supervision, and parents' night out, as well as ski outings, a new program that we're bringing in the next few weeks. Move for approval, please.
Motion by Ms. Smalley,
Second.
second by Mr. Soriano. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. I'd like to just take a moment for a public service announcement this evening and actually turn it around to say thank you to both my council people that are leaving us this evening. Ms. Hagedis, it's been a pleasure to get to know you, and we've had differences of opinion, but we always seem to come together and vote on the issues that are the most important to keep Mount Pleasant going strong. The other individual I'd like to recognize, and if you just indulge me for a moment, is Nick DiPaolo. And this is a hard one for me. They say that a man's strength really can be measured in the amount of friends he has. And if you've been around Nick DiPaolo, other than here at Town Board, you realize that not only is he a popular person, but he has many friends. And that really speaks to his quality as a human being, as a man, as a community member. He is open, he is honest, but he is tremendously hardworking. When he said that he could no longer run this year for re-election, it was for a reason that most of us will sincerely appreciate, and I do, and that is that his young family needs him. It will be a loss for the town of Mount Pleasant on the town board. However, as the supervisor said, Nick will not be going far. He will always be here with us in some capacity, but more than that, he'll always be in the community. And Nick, take the time you need with your children. Take the time you need with those Westlake High School students to get them into the best colleges they can get into. But always know that you have friends here, and I appreciate so much what you've taught me and working together with you for the past 5 years. So good luck, my friend.
Thank you very much, Lori. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Lori.
Councilwoman Haggis.
Yes, I only have 2 items tonight on the agenda. One we have tabled, but the first one is our favorite from the Highway Department. It's the purchase of salt for the streets. They're buying, the vendor is Atlantic Salt, and the description is salt, and its quantity is 800 tons, and the unit price is $65.74 per ton, plus the fuel adjustment, which is 0.06 per ton. And the total cost for this installment of the salt is $52,544. I move to approve, please.
Motion by Ms. Haggis,
Second.
second by Mr. DiPaolo. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2, we had a discussion on that we would wish to table this for further discussion. Could I have a motion?
Yes.
Jessica, you want to make a motion?
Yes, I'd like
table?
to move the item number 2, which is a personnel issue, to table it for the more discussion, and the town board will bring it back to the floor at the appropriate time.
Motion by Ms. Haggis to table,
Second it.
second by Mr. Saliano. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And my last item is the authorization to promote Thomas Verrilli to foreman effective January 1st, 2020 at the salary per 2020 budget. This is from Richard Benquit, Superintendent of Highways, who's requesting the authorization to promote Thomas Verrilli to fill the position of foreman, vacated by Paul Valero due to his recent retirement. His qualifications meet all the requirements for the position, and if approved, this will be effective January 1st, 2020. I move to approve, please.
Motion by Ms. Haggis,
Second.
second by Ms. Smalley. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much, and every holiday that you celebrate, I hope, is happy.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. You too. I don't believe we have anything for our town attorney.
No.
Next item would be authorization to hold a reorganization meeting on Thursday, January 2nd at 6 p.m.
Move for approval.
Motion by Mr. DiPaolo.
Second.
Second by Mr. Saliano. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next schedule of meetings would be our work session would be Tuesday, January 7th at 7 p.m. And the business session will be January 14th at 8 p.m. If there be no further business, aside from wishing everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and a Happy Hanukkah, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Saliano.
Second.
Second by Ms. Smalley. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Merry Christmas.